Hey, I'm Licky with The Outpost. Today we're going to be having a look at 1911s, more specifically the new to the Australian market Rock Island Armory 1911s, and also a bit of a general look at its place in the Australian handgun scene. So these were brand new guns purchased by us and not review samples. We purchased 4 models for testing and review. The 4 models we tested were the GI Standard, the Rock Standard, the Rock Ultra, and the Tac Ultra. So these were made by Armscore in the Philippines. Now, if that name rings a bell to you, it's because they also made the STI Spartan. Now, if you're familiar with STI as a brand, that should be a pretty good indicator to you that they know how to make a quality 1911. When we were given the chance to check out these Rock Islands up close, we jumped at it. We're very familiar with 1911 platforms. We've used cheap 1911 platforms before, and when I say cheap, I mean cheap in terms of quality and reliability. So we were very keen to have a look at these and see if they fell into that trap. Quite happy to say they did not. We were very pleased with how they ran, how they're made, accuracy, quality, and reliability of these firearms. So here in Australia, we have a very specific set of gun laws when it comes to handguns. So a lot of the conversation and a lot of the debate that you see about whether a 1911 is still relevant doesn't apply as much to us as it does to other places. So for instance, we don't everyday carry or concealed carry, we aren't allowed to. And the vast majority of people buying a handgun in Australia today are buying it for a club use or a target use. So most of the debate and discussion you see about the validity of 1911 doesn't have as much weight here because most of our people are buying club or target use guns. So things like magazine capacity, caliber, weight that you see in those classic 1911 debates doesn't really matter so much here to us. So while we're talking about the classic 1911 debates, let's delve into them. So the first one you often see is 45 ACP versus 9mm. 45 ACP is not nearly as relevant here in Australia because most states and territories have laws that say anything over a 38 caliber is classified as a high caliber round. Not all clubs are approved for this round and not all matches are approved for this round. So most people are buying a 9mm. From this leads into magazine capacity. Nearly all states and territories for club use have a magazine capacity limit of 10 rounds or less on semi-auto handguns that you can buy for club or target use. So even if you're using a Glock or a CZ or another double stack platform, they are limited to 10 rounds. And so as a result of that, you're not running at as much of a disadvantage as you would be, say, in the States from running a single stack to a double stack. From there, you work into weight. So the classic 1911s are heavy. Yes, they are a heavy gun. However, like I said before, we're not carrying them or using them in a defensive or a combative situation. We're using them at the club. And weight can actually be your friend at the club in helping to soak up a bit of recoil. Also, with 1911s, something you always see about is the size of the gun. So commander or government models, we have barrel length restrictions in most parts of Australia, which mean that you are not allowed anything less than a 120mm barrel length, which limits us to government models only. Which also works in our favour a little bit in terms of using them for club use because a 5-inch barrel gives you that extra sighting radius, helps you get some hits on target. So here in Australia, for most matches that people are shooting, the 1911 fits a lot of bills. They are a steel-framed, hammer-fired pistol. So steel frame helps you soak up a bit of that recoil, get back on target quicker, and also the hammer-fired system, single action only trigger, generally engender a crisp, light trigger, which can help you to keep your shots on target. This is how the 1911 stays relevant in the Australian market, more so than others. So while a steel-framed hammer-fired gun may be more suitable for some club matches and target applications, a lot of times newer shooters or people getting into those disciplines go for a polymer frame striker-fired or something to that extent, mainly due to price point. A steel frame hammer-fired gun traditionally is more expensive than a polymer frame striker-fired pistol. There are some exceptions to this rule, but as a general rule, most of those guns are more expensive. Given that these Rock Island 1911s start from 650 Australian dollars, they make a very accessible platform for new and budget-driven shooters. So these Rock Islands offer up all the same benefits you get with other 1911 platforms, but at a much more accessible price point. Okay, so the triggers in all of these 1911s are 70 series triggers. So what that means for us as shooters is you get a very, very crisp, very nice trigger. They're as good as any off-the-shelf 1911 I've shot, and you can feel that especially in the really crisp break and very short reset that you get across all of the models in the lineup. It's easy to get carried away with preconceived notions about the quality of a firearm based on its cost. It's important to remember that just because a firearm occupies a different place in the market doesn't necessarily mean it's of subpar quality. So one way they've achieved the price point they're at is through the use of puckerization on steel instead of, say, using stainless or blued steel. It's not as corrosion resistant as what stainless would be, but you don't get something for nothing. You do have to change something in order to make the cost less. That having been said, I much prefer in this case to have a change like that, which is an aesthetic change, rather than sacrificing, say, quality or reliability. So we put hundreds of rounds through each of these in a variety of different ammunition brands, weights, and power factors. So as terms of reliability, 100%. Where cheaper guns often falter is in long-term reliability. These have been out in the hands of shooters over in places like the United States for many years now. They've had thousands and thousands of rounds put through them, and they've proven themselves to be a quality firearm that will be around for the long haul. In terms of accuracy, we tested these four alongside my own personal 1911, which did cost a significant amount more than any of these, and I achieved the same result with all 5 guns across 7, 10, and 25 meters. This means to me that the guns themselves are accurate, and in this case exceed the ability of me as a shooter. We also had other members of our team test these guns, and they ended up with the same results as they normally would with their own pistols. All right, so let's go ahead and break down each model and what application each one would have for club use. So we'll start off with some old school cool. So this is the GI standard model. Now it's been made to replicate the look and feel of a traditional M1911A1. So as part of that, you have a lower beaver tail design, fixed sights, hammer and trigger designed, all to look and feel like a traditional M1911A1. Because of this, it qualifies for Class 1 service shooting. So that is a really interesting application that we haven't seen a lot of in recent years here in Australia, something that qualifies in that Class 1 category in a 1911 platform, which is really exciting. Now, things to remember about a classic 1911, it does come with all the downfalls of a classic 1911. So things like the sights. They are made to be, as the classic ones were, they are non-adjustable and they are small and somewhat harder to pick up than the rest of the series. Same with the beaver tail design. So the beaver tail design on this is a lot lower and a bit more pronounced. So when you are firing, it gives you a slightly lower grip on the gun and doesn't allow you to get as high and up into that bore axis as you would like perhaps in another gun. But that having been said, if you were to change those things, it would no longer classify for service. So it makes sense for them to do it in this case. The other thing is this is the most accessible in terms of price. So this is going to be somewhere between $650 and $700, which means if you're looking for a 1911 at the most accessible price point you can get, this is your gun. So if you're not looking to shoot service and you are just looking to get into a 1911 platform at an accessible price point, then the Rock Standard might be the one to look at. So this one here has a lot of upgrades on the GI spec, which you still can shoot it in Class 2 service, but you can also shoot it at a whole bunch of other matches and be a little bit more user-friendly. So in terms of that, you get a Novak cut rear sight, you get a skeletonized trigger, skeletonized hammer, you get ambi safeties, you also get a full-length guide rod and a higher beaver tail with an extended beaver tail on it. So all of these things add up to a nicer feeling gun in the hand, in my opinion, and also an easier to use sight system. So if you are going to be shooting action match, IPSC Classic Division, NRA, practical pistol, falling plate, this is going to be a great gun. And at sub $1,000, it is still extremely accessible in terms of price point and a 1911 that you can use at the club and have a lot of fun with. So if you are looking to shoot in IPSC Classic Division or practical pistol, any of those run and gun matches where you need to get on target and shoot accurately and quickly, you might want a few extra upgrades, and for that you want the Rock Ultra. Now the Rock Ultra is upgraded in 3 specific areas. The sights, so you're looking at a white dot Novak cut adjustable rear sight and a fiber optic red front sight, which makes picking up that front sight and your first shot a lot easier. Some aggressive G10 grip scales to help you with your grip so that you can get that recoil control down, and also an extended mag well so that you can hit your reloads a little easier. You can guide them in with no worries. So shot this gun, really enjoyed this gun, and I think especially for IPSC Classic Division, this would be a great contender for you. And they're still not expensive. So this is going to be sub $1,300 with all those upgrades and add-ons pretty much ready to go right out of the box. So we move up now to their top spec model, which is the Tac Ultra. Now the Tac Ultra is the same as the Rock Ultra. It has all the same upgrades except for one difference. It has a tactical full-length Picatinny dust cover for mounting of accessories and anything you want to put on the front of your gun. The one side effect that this has is it also adds weight to the frame. So the gun overall is a little heavier, and more specifically heavier in the frame, so that it helps tame that recoil down a little more. Something to bear in mind though, with that full-length dust cover, it does take it out of Classic Division in IPSC. Not such a big deal for other matches, but just something to be aware of for that gun. The Tac Ultra also comes with a different slide. It has front and rear serrations that are wider than the other serrations you see on the other models. The other thing to remember is this is their top spec gun, and it is still sub $1,500. It's really hard to find a top of the line 1911 for any manufacturer that's under that sort of money. In fact, sometimes it's hard to find that on a base model 1911. So for everything you get for your money, these look to be a really good buy. So I'm very happy overall with these guns. They perform well, they're accurate, they seem to be very quality made firearms. I do have a few little nitpicky things that I wanted to bring up. So you've already heard my thoughts about the GI spec with the sights and the beaver tail, but that's just part and parcel for having a traditional style 1911. There's nothing can be done about that. One small nitpick I did have with the Rock Standard was the front sight. Because it's slanted away from you, in bright sunlight it reflects light back at you, makes it a little bit difficult to see against dark backgrounds. It's not a big deal. It would be easy enough sorted with a little bit of sight black, or if you wanted to, grab one of the many aftermarket 1911 front sights that are around and replace it out. So these have come into the market at a really good time and at a really good price point. They are quality firearms that are accurate and reliable. They look good, and also they are filling a few different gaps that we're currently seeing. So whether you're a service shooter, IPSC, looking to buy your first steel-framed hammer-fired pistol, or your 10th, they're a pistol that you would be proud to own. Thanks very much for watching. We'll catch you next time.